Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am recording this video with the returning guest. I am very happy to welcome back on my channel Michael YON. Many of you don't really need any introduction to Michael. However, he's an author, he's a former war correspondent, someone who actually was in the places that a lot of prostitutes, as they call them, talk about. But he was there, he was experiencing it, he knows firsthand, and he continues to know firsthand because of his research and his extensive travel, how the shit show is unfolding in this world, because it truly is a shit show. And on my channel, I can say it. I want to say I am very happy to connect with Michael, who is back in Japan. Michael YON, everyone. The links to Michael's YouTube channel, Substack, to support his work will be down below this video. Thank you, Michael, for joining me. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me on, and I'm happy you're back in Poland. I wish Misako and I could come visit there. It's been a long time since I was in Poland.
Thank you. So I actually, since you said that, I want to mention, because a lot of my viewers know I have been traveling for the last few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks almost now. I've been to Asia briefly, and then I was back in Europe. I was in Italy. I'm just saying this as a reference to you mentioning Poland as well. And I have to tell you that for someone like myself who have lived outside Poland, like I lived outside in the United States for 17 years. It's almost like I cannot find my place in a way, but Poland has changed so much in comparison to Italy, for example, or Portugal, where I was just recently. You can really see how it affected those countries, the migration, the poverty, the struggles. Italy is gorgeous, but you see a lot of infrastructure and things are. I was surprised to see like how Poland is actually pretty clean. It's not perfect, but it's pretty clean. It's pretty safe. Again, there are situations, but just on that note. But Michael, I want to ask you this. Actually, let's start with this. This is like conversation from my heart today, because I took a little break from what's going on because so much is going on. It's really heavy on my soul and my heart and my brain. When you look at the world right now, what countries would you say are the safest or the best to live in at this moment?
Well, at this instantaneous moment, Japan is quite safe at the moment. But I think in the future it could get quite dangerous. It could, if there gets to be global food problems, it would probably hit pretty hard here. And so, likewise, the borders are increasingly open here as well. And so, and another problem with Japan, I love Japan, and but looking at I'm always going to look at the danger and the positive sides. I'm going to try to look at it as balanced as possible, but I don't try to artificially balance it, right? But it's very safe at the moment. But it could, again, like I said, if we end up in a situation where Strait of Malacca is closed and the Sunda Strait and Lombok and all that and other things unfold, which I think likely will, then this country, Japan, could go into famine. And I think that there's actually a significant chance of that. So that obviously would be not safe.
So at this moment, since you've mentioned Japan, but that's Asia, if you look at the rest of the world, because I believe, even within the crazy countries, so-called crazy, like really, on the steroids with implementing Zionist/globalist agenda, if the soul or the person, the spirit, wants to be like there is of service, those people will remain safe. This is my attitude. Like you will be in the right place at the right time, protected. That's how I look at it. But overall, do you see any countries, for example, in Europe or let's say South America or anywhere else besides Japan, that you would say, New Zealand maybe? Do you see any countries that, let's put this way, this question, that globalist/Zionist agenda, which is the same, will be implemented a little bit slower, like they will not be the first on the line?
Well, in reality, instead of looking at countries, I would look at sort of areas, because areas where it's just undeveloped and not a lot going on, because they're going to try to control, and they are trying to control places that are highly developed and where there's a lot of routes and resources. For instance, putting in the giant smart city called Tri-State City, which will include, well, Netherlands and a big part of Belgium and Germany, right? It's a giant smart city. But in fact, these smart cities are all over the place already. And they're just waiting for more lethal activation. There's smart cities that have been around for a long time in the Middle East and in Asia, like in places in China or Singapore, where Singapore is very safe actually until it's not, right? So a lot of places are safe until they're not. We saw what happened with the death jab, for instance, and how quickly, so many people became, really going after everybody else to put the jab in their arms. And now many of those people are actually dead. And so, and we don't know how that's actually going to end up playing out. There's no way for us to actually know. But keep in mind that information war never ended, and it didn't start with that. And so there's other information wars that are always unfolding by different players that are doing those. And so one of the biggest um, dangers are actually the people, and one of the biggest safety nets are the people around you. Are they the type of people that are just going to go with the flow and load people up on trains, or are they the type that will not? Because not going along with the globalist is actually, it's down to, that's a survival mechanism at this point. Those who just follow rules that are just gears in the machine, those are, I mean, that's the greatest danger. The people that work, at airports and will just throw you in jail for some reason, border patrol or whatever. When I was across the U.S. southern border, I went across the entire southern border. Border patrol were actually helping invade the United States. They were loading up the buses. I was there. I went across the entire border. So it took many months. And I talked with many border patrol, and I saw it many times. And they would blame the Mexican cartels, but in fact, it was our people that were loading up the buses, and our people were the ones driving them around the United States and putting them in hotels and then releasing them all over the United States by the millions, right? So that was our government doing it. And so our government is still doing it. They're not doing it in the numbers that they did it before, or at least it's not as open, because now they hand out visas. Although the border is still open. Trump says our border is closed. That's a lie. It's an abject lie. People are coming across the border day and night. Like Chinese are coming across the border now, still in large numbers at San Diego is one example. So if you live in San Diego, you can go look right now. And so they're still coming across. It's not closed. And again, not to mention the ones who come in and they're handed work visas or student visas or other sorts of visas, and they just stay, right? And so our government's the one that's doing it. Keep in mind, Trump is a Zionist. He's openly a Zionist. He brags about it. And the Zionists are working to destroy not just Iran, they're working to destroy the United States. They're very clear about it. They don't hide it. I mean, they're highest. The Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society is one of the main was one of the main mechanisms, one of the main organizations that floods people into the United States, including Iranians, which I have on film. I took Laura Loomer to the Darien Gap in Panama. Laura Loomer, who's flying around with Trump now, that sort of thing. I took her to the Darien Gap, I don't know, a couple of years ago or so, and she's interviewing an Iranian right there on my video, which I've published numerous times. And the highest Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, their office is like 40 meters away from where she was interviewing that guy. Highest was the one helping the Iranians into the United States. Highest is the one helping Chinese and IOM and Catholic Charities and others. But highest is one of the main mechanisms helping huge numbers of people come through the Darien Gap. I have records of over 1 million coming through. Just during the Biden time, I think it was probably about 1.4 million. There's some months that I'm missing records for. But if I extrapolate from the, because I have over 1 million records, but if I extrapolate from the missing records, I think there was about 1.4 million that came through during the Biden time. And so at the end of the day, these are the people that Highest and others have helped invade the United States, and the United States helped. Department of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, was a Highest board member. He came down to Darien. He was in the China camp right beside the highest office. I was physically present when he did it. I mean, I've got lots of video. I published it, and and his public affairs also published photos of him inside that. I call it China camp. In Panama, they call it San Vicente camp, but I call it China camp because that's where most of the Chinese come through. But a lot of the Iranians and Bangladeshis and Somalis, but mostly it's like Iranians and it's people that have more money, like Iranians, Chinese, people that can afford more. They end up in China camp. There's this other camp, maybe 20 minutes drive away, called Las Blancas. The larger numbers of people go through that camp.
You know, so much to say here. Thank you for telling all of this. I remember years ago, actually, I think like 2020 or something like that. I came across this information, and you know this. I mean, for you, it's nothing new, but I learned that a lot of ports in California, I mean, some ports are owned by China. And, you know, for some time, I used to think like, well, first I was like, you know, I was brainwashed in different directions. And then I kind of awakened myself to what's going on. But the point is, now when I look at all of this, Michael, I feel like there is no country, literally not a single country. Well, I stay with this. There is not a single country that does not have any Zionist influence, or it's completely run by the Zionists, pretending maybe that they are not Zionists, they are like a Christian, Orthodox Christian, or they are something else. Because behind the scenes, actually, the Zionists, the Chabad, Lubavitch, or some other people of this nature, they pull the strings. So now I want to show you this map, Michael, because before we connected, I said, I have to show you this, and let's talk about this for a moment, because this is part of this plan. Where is it? Right here, one moment. Here we go. This is the map, and I don't know how accurate it is, but to some extent, I believe this is the truth. This is the map of data centers growth. This is from March last year. So now, of course, the numbers might be much higher, but overall, it looks like, and we know this, US is number one as far as data centers, and you see a few other countries here, UK, you see Russia as well, which many people still cognitive dissonance. They think it's different, but there is digital ID, people. I talk about this on my channel, so just go to older videos, please. I'm not going to repeat
I
this
just saved
again.
it. I just saved that. I just saved that map so I can look at it later.
Yes,
Yeah.
but this is older, Michael. But anyway, look, even Poland is here, 144, Germany, whatever it is. Like we see some key countries. Of course, US is leading here. Now, I have to tell you that as I look at the US, and you were just there, and this is what I want to ask you, it looks like it's absolutely on steroids. I had moments recently when I was thinking maybe I should go back to US, you know, and start all over again. But when I look at what's happening there, and everywhere is something, but I'm like, this is really crazy, the speed of it, like on steroids. So let me ask you, when you were there, first and foremost, how was you crossing the border? Did they check your devices? Did they go through your, let's say, YouTube channel or other social media platforms? How was that experience for you when you entered?
Not openly. I mean, but for instance, they didn't check my passport. So, I mean, you're just walking through and they're doing facial ID as you walk in, right? When I left, though, my bags had been opened. They threw those stickers in there, and that's the little papers that says that they opened them. And they do that all the time. They open my bags constantly. And often they'll just mess things up like monkeys went through there. I mean, it's like Planet of the Apes checks your bags. They're pretty terrible about that. I don't know if they do it to other people, but they put things back in a way that they can be damaged and that sort of thing. Actually, I don't like to carry any check-in bags because I don't trust that the government won't actually put something like drugs in there or child pornography or something like that, because they would do things like that. They cannot be trusted at all. And so once you check in a bag, you're taking your chances that, whatever they can put, 8 pounds of cocaine in there or something, the next thing you know, you're in jail for the rest of your life. And you're not going to have any defense there because they would have done it to begin, from the ground up.
Yes, I think from my side, my internet is a little bit off, but I could hear everything you were saying. And I agree with you. And actually, this is very important. You're right. Check-in luggage, they can put any stuff in there. But when you were in the US and you've mentioned the border situation and you met with a lot of people, I know because I have been following some videos you posted on your channel during your visit. Overall, your impression, when was the last time you visited US before this trip, Michael? Was there like some longer time frame of a break?
This trip was more okay. I went what 6 weeks ago or something because I spoke in Las Vegas at the Red Pill conference with G. Edward Griffin. Then I shot down to Texas, and then I came back to Japan. But before that, maybe I would have to check my own records, but maybe a year, something like that. And now keep in mind, and since 9/11. I spent by far most of my time out of the United States, although I have spent several years back in the United States. But since 9/11, after 9/11, I went to Asia and I started studying cults in places like India and Nepal. And then I went back to the United States and lived with a cult for a while and went to Hawaii studying cults because, at 9/11, with what I thought happened at the time was that suicide bombers ran into the buildings. Now I question that as well. But the study of cults is very, very important. It's one of the most important lines of study I ever did. So that was about 3.5 years, and that was traveling around the world. Then I went to Iraq in December of 2004, and then I spent about 4 years in Iraq, 2 years in Iraq and two in Afghanistan. So 4 years in the wars. So 4 years in Iraq and Afghanistan total, right? And then fighting in Thailand and other places. So I started covering war more, right? But the study of cults was very, very important. But then I started spending more and more of my time overseas. So I've spent well over half my life out of the United States. So, more than 20 years in Asia and 7 years in Europe, maybe 5 in the Middle East, that sort of thing. And 5 or 6, yeah, maybe 5 in the Middle East. So, I've been all over the place, seeing a lot of things, a lot of time in Central America, just learning what I can about the world. And that's why you see me going off in different directions when I'm talking all the time, because I've got all these rivers of memories, and they combine together to make a different picture of the world than I think most people see, actually.
I want to ask you this about the destruction of United States. And I know you remember this moment as well, as I saw this video and you saw this video of Netanyahu, I should say Milejkowski, of Benjamin Milejkowski walking with the book. Someone asked him, he was walking up the stairs. It was in the US, I believe. And some journalist or whoever it was, I don't remember the name of the person, asked him, what are you reading? And he said something of, I'm paraphrasing, of the fall of the Roman Empire. And like right away, there was this kind of, he said, like this time, we, which means we know who, are going to win, conquer. And that empire now is the United States. So they are destroying the United States, and not only United States, but how this destruction will ultimately look like, Michael? Like, how do you see the end of it? Do you see the moment when people just, because there is no force besides the people that can actually oppose things. I mean, in my personal opinion, there is no other like organization or group or government or any sort of that. So how do you see that destruction going? Do you think they will go to the very end? How this will look like, in your opinion?
The Zionist cult is quite hate. It's a hate, fueled cult. Keep in mind, most of the Zionists are Christian Zionists, but they're useful idiots. I mean, the Zionists like Netanyahu will kill all the Christians. He doesn't care about. They're fools to him, and they are fools actually. And I was raised that way. I was raised in a Christian Zionist environment, and that's what I was taught. They're the God's children and all that stuff. Then over time, I start to realize, no, this is a cult, right? And the Zionist cult contains some Jews, some Christian, most are Christians actually, a lot of atheists, and actually some Muslims as well. So I mean, but it's a death cult, and you can see what the death cult is doing now. Some people call them Nazis or Zio Nazis, right? And there's accuracy in that. That's not hyperbole. I mean, after World War II and during World War II, many of the Nazis and the Zionists moved to Argentina together, right? I mean, Mayakovsky, the president of Argentina, he's a Maliakovsky too, Melee, right? So I mean, this is all. I mean, it's very entwined, and so uh, now how will it end for the United States if Americans don't stand up? Oh, they'll be genocided straight up. And you look at Trump. Trump is it's amazing how many Americans still follow that guy. I call him orange fungus because that's what he is. But he's a Zionist, and he's proud to be a Zionist. And Zionists are killing Christian Zionists. I mean, the Zionist of Trump's sort. He's the atheist Zionist. He says he's Jewish or whatever, but he's an atheist. That's clear. But he'll kill every single Christian on planet Earth and Jews too, right? And Muslims for that matter. It doesn't matter. He'll kill the Jews just as fast. Zionists have killed huge numbers of Jews. Zionists and Jews have been killing each other since the beginning, right? And so, a lot of Jews are Zionists, but a lot of Jews absolutely hate Zionists, and they've been resisting that, and the Jews have been being genocided by Zionists, right? Look, a lot of the death of Jews in Europe in World War II were by Zionists, right? Straight up, everybody knows that who's actually studied much, right? It's very clear, you know it, right? But they always blame it on the Nazis. But many Jews were actually Nazis, and many Zionists were. But the Zionists and the Nazis, they were actually separate, but they, these things always commingle and intertwine. But the Zionists were trying to get the Jews over to Palestine because Palestine is so important. Palestine's, very, it's next to the Suez Canal, and it's got a lot of resources there. It's in a very important place of planet Earth. Every war that we've ever studied is about one or more of these three things: routes, resources, and ideology. It's about either routes, resources, or ideology, or sometimes all three. And the current war is all three, right? Now the Zionists, for their part, and the Chinese Communist Party, they are fighting each other like crazy, right? So they're frenemies. Both are working to destroy the United States. The Chinese the Chinese own and operate a lot of infrastructure in the United States, as do the Zionists, right? So they've got a temporary almost peace. It's not quite peace because they'll kill each other too. And of course, the Indians are getting their teeth into a lot as well. But the Zionists and the Chinese are both ripping into Americans, and Americans are just still talking about. Some of them are still talking about Trump's our hero and whatever. And it'll be the death of the United States. Actually, that stupidity, literal stupidity. But the Zionists and the Chinese also are fighting each other. That's why I think you'll end up seeing Strait of Malacca get closed eventually. I predicted on my Substack in July of 2025 in writing that I thought Strait of Hormuz would be closed by Zionists and they would blame Iran. And that is what has happened, right? Strait of Hormuz is off again, on again, closed now. And I predicted that in writing, and exactly how, more or less, not exactly. I don't know what the exact details actually are, but the fact is that it would be closed. And now Strait of Malacca, I think it will be another that they go for, because I think the Zionists, the Chinese and the Zionists both have strengths and weaknesses in their fight against each other. The Chinese have larger numbers, and they have a lot of money too. The Zionists also have a lot of money. I'm not sure who has the most resources actually, but when it comes to simple human resources, that would be Chinese, right? But some of the advantages that the Zionists have is they could strangle off some of the chokeholds that China needs for food and fuel. They could strangle off using, for instance, Indonesia, using the United States as the United States has a good relationship with Indonesia, but the Zionists Israel obviously doesn't. But I think you'll end up seeing Indonesia will be used, likely to close Malacca, and Sunda and Lombok, right, will be eventually closed, and then probably a war between Brazil and Argentina. I haven't seen anybody predict that at all, except for me. Sometimes I'll say what I just said. I think you'll eventually see a war between Argentina and Brazil, and that's related to knocking down China's food supply. China has a great relationship with Brazil, and they get a lot of food from Brazil. And Argentina China and the Zionists are fighting over Argentina. I went down there and looked actually, but I think you'll see Argentina will go for Falklands, which Argentinians call Malvinas. I think if you go to Buenos Aires, you'll see signs everywhere for that we basically need. Malvinas is ours, right? And meaning Falklands belongs to Argentina. Now Falklands obviously is under the UK Great Britain umbrella right now, but Argentina, because that'll actually be United States doing it on behalf of Zionists, they could take it, right? When Masako and I, we went to the what's it called, CPAC, which is the big Republican rallies, that they have all over the world. We went to that in Buenos Aires, and people like Shapiro spoke, and one of the Trump
When was
daughters.
that, Michael? When was it? What year?
That would have been 2024 December, I think, or November.
So
So
pretty
not long ago.
recent. Pretty recent.
Yeah. So we went there, and you could find it online. So whenever that was, we were physically present, and so they started off the CPAC with "Viva Argentina, Viva Estados Unidos, and Viva Israel." Right. So that's how they actually started it. From the opening moments. So it was a big, Zionist love fest. Keep in mind, Buenos Aires is one of the biggest Zionist cities in the earth. I mean, that would be like Tel Aviv, New York, and Buenos Aires is number 3, right? So, I mean, this is thick down there. But China wants it too. China is building the bioceanic corridor, and the Zionists are trying to get in the way. Both of them are fighting for Patagonia. So it's a big, we can see the same fight in different places like Panama, Morocco. You see the thing going on with Morocco now. Chuck Holton and I, we went to Morocco 5 years ago, and we were warning about what's happening now with Ceuta. We went to the Ceuta border, in Morocco 5 years ago, and there was already, and it was very clear what was going to eventually happen, that Morocco / the Zionists would go for Ceuta and Melilla, right? They'll go for Ceuta because Ceuta that's one of the pillars of Hercules. That's right on the Strait of Gibraltar. It's on the Strait of Gibraltar. So the Zionists have very good relations with Morocco, but so does China. China's putting a lot. So they're both fighting over Morocco too. Zionists seem to have the upper hand in Morocco, but Zionists will want to take out Spain. Netanyahu's father wrote a book about the Spanish Inquisition in the 1500s, right? And it's called the Spanish Inquisition in Spain in the 1500s or something. I've got it right here actually, and so they the axe to grind has been there a long time, but it's not just about axe to grind, because they could have some enemy out in the jungles of Amazon somewhere they wouldn't waste a bunch of time on. But if you're next to a route or a resource they want, then they're going to blame the natural thing that humans will do, and especially Zionist humans and Chinese communists will do the same, is they're professional victims, right? They'll constantly say, look at all the bad things they did to us, because that professional victimhood is what they use to, first of all, it's a combinatorial force with their own people, right? It combines them together. It's a binding force. And also it's a casus belli. You can use the professional victimhood to create hatred, and hatred is rocket fuel for war, right? Hatred and disgust, actually. When you mix hatred and disgust, if you mix those two primary emotions, hatred is, and you mix disgust, I'm sorry, if you mix anger and disgust, you'll get hatred, right? So if you mix anger and disgust, those are primary emotions, anger and disgust, but you'll get, a complex emotion of hatred, and the hatred is rocket fuel for war.
Yes, and so much here to uncover as well. Go through what you just said. Ultimately, just from the last sentence you said, as I am coming across those things that they're, when I say they're, I mean Zionist, really satanic cult operation. They want the world to hate them, because this is the part of this prophecy. Like, there is almost like a stage when the entire world hates so-called Israel, right? Like, as they define themselves. And it's almost important for the next stages for the Messiah to come. So all those things, it's like they want, I was thinking about this lately, Michael. I'm like, you know what? The best way is just like, don't give them this energy, like having awareness and knowledge, like you're saying, that's like one thing. But when we generate this emotion that we hate them, or like we don't agree with what they do, but they almost want that energy, that lush of hate. so they can literally feed on it. And going back to the US, that's what I asked you originally. I was thinking about this too, how they destroy it. So it's pretty obvious, right? To unite IDF with American military, which I think is actually already it has been going on, but now kind of official. Again, I'm not an expert, but it's kind of like what has been going on for years. Wasn't it the same? Now, the data centers, and this is something that you also know a lot, and your friend, I think I can call Catherine Austin Fitz your friend because you spent a lot of time with her. When she worked for government, and she was reporting about those missing money and those underground facilities. So there is not only the aspect people think of surveillance, control, or your info goes, through AI whatsoever, but this is also about connecting the resources from the earth, water, and I don't know what else, that literally goes down to those facilities that are built underneath certain areas. So the level of destruction, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just like having a moment of saying all of this. We have the military aspect, we have IDF controlling pretty much Americans the way they have been controlling Palestinians in similar way. We have the resources limited, inflation, very high prices for electricity, water, all of this, unlivable areas of United States because of those data centers. So don't you think those are like the key components of how they're going to destroy?
Right. I mean, it's, for instance, the jabs, I mean, as one of the components, but I think that they'll also put the United States into famine. And keep in mind also the millions, tens of millions that have been of so-called migrants that have been brought in to the United States that have no relation to the United States. Many have, they don't speak a word of English, and and it's and they have no respect for any local culture. In fact, they've been taught to hate Americans, and that Americans are the cause of all their problems, despite that they're getting money from the Americans, lifeblood actually. And so, and likewise in Europe, you see the same thing across Europe, right? And so I've spent a lot of time and all over Europe, and you can see Europe is now, the bathtub is filled with people that should not be there at all. And yet there they are, and they are. So you've got various weapons, actually all of which could be lethal to the country, like food supply, and that, lack of sufficient lack of food actually obviously could be lethal to a lot of governments and millions of people, and the tens of millions of invading people that have been brought in. So that's another lethal weapon and permanent, and then things like the pharma, death jabs, weather manipulation, removing water infrastructure around Europe, and putting up smart cities, control grids, digital money. Catherine Austin Fitz is always talking about that. Solari.com, they're publishing things about this all the time. Extremely well written, by the way, very smart organization. But so it's a very complex web of weaponry. Like, for instance, one is just normal intoxicants like alcohol, cannabis, and all these sorts of things. And what I call ants, acoustic neurotoxins, is what they call music, right? I mean, the modern music that we grew up probably loving, I loved a lot of it. As I've learned more, I realized what I was really enjoying was intoxicant. It was ants. It was acoustic neurotoxins. It wasn't music, not just the lyrics either. All about it. What they do is they mix the combination of actual intoxicants or prescription drugs or whatever, and this music, quote unquote, and it's mind altering. Look at people like Joe Rogan. I call him Doper Joe. I mean, he gets on his program and he pushes dope to millions of young people, right? He'll get all these singers on and whatnot. And, it's not just him. There's many that are like that. They're pushing, you'll see these people with these big podcasts, they're drinking whiskey and, pushing nicotine or whatever. This is part of the larger WMD, weapons of mass destruction, that are released on people. One of the main ways that we defeated Indians in the United States was whiskey. was whiskey, huge amounts of whiskey, right? And the Chinese the Chinese always claim to be victims of opium, but they've been using opium as a weapon long before the Opium Wars and during the Opium Wars, and after they still do use, and the United States does as well. Some people use opium as money. Some countries have used opium as money because it's got a lot of the characteristics of money, right? It's divisible, it's high value, small, it's got actually very long shelf life. None of the drug experts I've talked with, like DEA people, and I've looked online, how long does opium actually last? How long? Nobody seems to know the answer. And I've checked, online looking for answers because I've seen a lot of opium in Afghanistan and places like India, right? But I was 2 years in Afghanistan. There was undulating hills of opium poppy. Papaver somniferum is the Latin name for it, right? Sleeping poppy, Papaver somniferum. And that opium is, I mean, it's worth huge amounts of money. And it's also used as money, just like tobacco has been. All these books are on tobacco, by the way. I got a couple shelf loaves, a book on the history of tobacco, because tobacco, like opium, like alcohol, these have all actually been used as actual money. I mean, gold is the ultimate money, and silver's up there too. But these are also used as actual currency. Right? It's amazing when you really look into the history of these things, and it still is. All of these things are. But the intoxicants are the main way that America and Europe and I see other countries too, even Japan and Thailand, they're dumbing us all down. They're dumbing down. They don't have to dumb down everybody. They just have to dumb down a sufficient number, a sufficient amount. And then you've basically got a dummy population. Even if there's still people out there that resisted it all, stayed clean, kept studying all their life, there will be a sufficient number that are straight up dumb. And we see it increasingly. I see people notice this all over the world.
Absolutely, Michael, what you just said, 100% true. I see this overall stupidity, and it's literally like a human being flesh, but doesn't have any thinking, not even mention critical thinking. Like, it's like on remote control almost. Like, you feel like you can just click certain options and they will go the way they were told. So whatever towers they will turn on, 5G, 6G, whatever G they have, is going to literally like program them and like direct them, not to even say those who had the experience, right? That's another thing, how it affects them. But I want to go to the Greater Israel Project. And if you don't mind, I want to play, this is very short clip, but to some people who still have no clue, or maybe they kind of have an idea, this will be good. And I would like you to watch, and I would like you to tell me after we watch this, what are the next stages of this operation of New Great Israel Project, which, by the way, can I just say, to me, Ukraine conflict and Iranian conflict, again, the same people, the same agenda. And I personally see this Greater New Israel map much, much larger than what you're going to see in this video. But I would like to play it, and then I give you the voice, Michael, to address all of this, if you don't mind.
This is the Promised Land, the project of Greater Israel. As you can see, it is a vast territory stretching from the Euphrates River to the Nile River. It encompasses the entire land of historic Palestine, all of Lebanon, and all of Jordan. Furthermore, it includes over 70% of Syria, nearly half of Iraq, part of Kuwait, 1/3 of Saudi Arabia, and finally, a quarter of Egypt. It is literally a comprehensive plan aimed at controlling the lands of 8 Arab countries to eventually form a massive Israeli empire in the Middle East. Every country in the world possesses clear borders that define its beginning and end. However, Israel never defines its borders because it is always invading or attempting to invade more lands. Israel drew its borders with Egypt and Jordan through peace treaties, but its borders with Lebanon, Syria, the West Bank, and Gaza remain undefined and unrecognized. This makes every war Israel fights an opportunity for expansion and the annexation of new territories.
Okay, I'm back quickly just to say a few words. As I was watching this, you know what country came to my mind first? Well, I know they want war with Egypt is like the plan, but Turkey. The role in Turkey in all of this, Michael. And I give you the voice right now. Please go.
They'll go for Turkey. And you said something extremely important just before you started the video. You think that this greater Israel that you'll see on that video that you just showed will be bigger than that. And I completely agree. And although you're actually the first person that I've seen say that, but I've been saying it for a while as well. Like Panama is part of it, right? And Argentina is part of it. And parts of Thailand like Koh Tao, Koh Phangan, Koh Samui, and Pai and other parts, right?
And Ukraine, Michael, sorry to add, and Ukraine.
That's right. Exactly. Ukraine, right? And obviously they won't stop at Ukraine. They'll go for Poland eventually, right? I mean, it might be a couple of generations, but they'll go for Poland. They'll go for Russia, and they'll spread the infection. It's a cult, right? So the cult can be used to infect people. That's what cults do often. They're not always infectious, but often they are. And in this case, they are, right? And so, but this cult also has some downside to it insofar as it seems to be going out of popularity, right? It's losing popularity because of the genocides that they've done at Gaza, they're doing in Lebanon. They're clearly going to go for Jordan, Syria, Iraq the same way. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see Mosul Dam get blown up at some point, or even Aswan and other places like that, because those would be easy to do, and it could create huge amounts of death and clear a lot of land. I mean, this is land clearance is what
I'm
goes on.
sorry to interrupt you, but can you remind me what areas? I'm sorry, like ignorance right now. Those two places that you mentioned, where are they?
Mosul Dam is just by Mosul in Iraq, and it's a huge dam, and it's I first wrote about it in like 2005 or 6. And so Mosul Dam, if Mosul Dam were to break, it would be devastating for Iraq, and especially if it broke at the wrong time of year, which probably would happen, because if somebody wanted to do massive damage to Iraq, they would go after Mosul Dam, and so that's a very serious weakness. And the Zionists would like to get rid of as many Arabs and Kurds, and although they work closely with Kurds, ultimately they'll stab the Kurds in the back for sure. And so, but destroying Mosul Dam would be actually devastating for Mosul and a lot of towns downrange from that, like Tikrit and Baghdad and those sorts of things. But then again, you look over in Egypt and you've got Aswan and dam, and there's a lot of water infrastructure that can be taken out. I would not be surprised to see, for instance, Saudi Arabia lose its water, its desalination, and other countries such as Qatar and UAE and well, Kuwait's already had theirs attacked, right? Bahrain, the United States Fifth Fleet headquarters is already closed. Actually, I've been in that headquarters actually, but but now it's because of the attacks, the United States has been run out of there. Actually, a lot of the U.S. forces are now in Israel. So I think the Iranians have been playing a smart game. Actually, they've been attacking U.S. forces and pushing us back out of a lot of the bases and concentrating our forces further away. But I think that this war is just getting started. Actually, I think just getting started. It's been going for centuries, but this is a huge flare up of this component. As Alex Jones said the other day when I was on with him, he said this is like a herpes flare up, which it is. It's like a herpes flare up the size of a stratovolcano, though. So I mean, the war is Ukraine, Russia, and all that are the same war. There's absolutely no difference between this and what's happening in Panama, Iran, and what's happening in Thailand. Not that there's a big war in Thailand that people can see, but I can see it because I know what I'm looking at, right? I see thousands of licenses for cannabis now in Thailand. that weren't there even 5 years ago. So now they've issued a good 20,000 licenses for distribution of cannabis and retail and wholesale and production and distribution, right? So I mean, and they've been doing similar down in Argentina because they're dumbing them down. They're dumbing down the ties. They're dumbing down the Argentinians like they've done to Americans and a lot of Europeans, right? Because the dumbing down process is, I mean, what a weapon system that is. You got to be patient while you do it, but they can make money the whole time because they sell the drugs to the people they're dumbing down. So you make billions, if not even trillions, off as the years and generations unfold by just dumbing them down and playing all the stupid shows that they watch while they drink their nightly drinks and that sort of thing.
Yes, plus media, plus big pharma combination, extra duper super steroids. And you know what you were just saying, I was thinking as this map, like I said before, I see this map much larger than what was presented. As far as so-called liberation of those regions in Ukraine that many people still believe. And again, I'm not going to talk about Chabad Lubavitch behind Putin and behind Zelensky, but what I'm going to say is recently coming across information, which is like right confirmation, Michael, that the young men are being killed. Let's just use an example of Ukraine and Russia, right? So the young force of the country, the young men are being killed, women are left alone, some are just migrating. Whatever the case, they have new properties, new land, or actually they say their land. They are so-called returning to, when I say they, and government from Ukraine is allegedly, or maybe not allegedly, maybe the fact, paying them those new/old settlers with a certain outfits to just, and start new life, start a new chapter. So as far as Poland goes, this is the plan. And people think like, oh, you don't have the migration, but there is a different plan for Poland. And there is a regioning, which I'm not going to talk about in this video, what they are planning to do as far the Ukropol, like parts of Poland becoming connected with Ukraine, then Ukrainian minorities actually becoming part of Polish parliament, because there's a certain percent of the population that lives in the country, which means like they have voting rights. Here we go. So it's like all this is being planned and executed in stages. Plus, not to say, of course, that some regions like returning to Galicia, for example, some nationality that's, run this show. So it's not no difference. It's just in a little, I mean, it's a difference comparing to how London looks like and Paris looks like, huge difference. But there is a different plan for the country. And as far as United States, how could I, Michael, forget about, because this old formula, divide and conquer. So now sending American troops, not just American troops, because this will be any young or, how to say, I don't know in English, forgot the word, like young men or, strong men in this age group that actually can contribute to the economy of the country and the prosperity and the future of the country. No, let's kill them all and replace with some freaking robots walking down the streets. So now they're going to send the troops, right? How this is going to look like? Tell me.
Right. I mean, genocide. I think that there will be a draft in the United States and probably across Europe, and it'll be used, as you just said, to kill people off and then replace them with robots and also migrants, quote unquote, to genocide the remnant of the people. When I lived in Poland, I spent about 2 years in Poland, and Poland, when I was there, foreign companies could not buy a Polish newspaper or radio station. You couldn't buy Gazeta Wyborcza for, it was against the law, right? I mean, now you could buy, the Polish newspapers, right? You couldn't buy a port at Gdynia or something. You couldn't buy the railway or something in Poland back then. But now everything's for sale. And so that I thought it was very wise when I lived in Poland and I read so much about how it's operating, and I learned so much in Poland. But one of the things I learned was the wisdom of don't let foreigners buy your newspapers, and now look, it's done. I mean, now Polish can be brainwashed just like Americans. but because literally sold off. I don't know. Is Gazette Wyborcza, did a German company buy that years ago? I don't recall, but a lot of the. Go ahead.
Michael, I have to tell you, as far as this, when this all started to take place, a lot of people will not like me saying this because they watch certain person on YouTube. His name is Jeffrey Sachs, and they absolutely adore the guy. But they are not aware that Jeffrey Sachs was absolutely crucial and implemental in this in implementation of this new so-called reform that was taking place in Poland just after 1989. And 1989 was this year when we had this so-called roundtable negotiations when, let's just give the official version, the communists delivered the country to the capitalists, okay? Now, the same people kind of just show up in a new camp, a lot of those people, or now they continue, like my father was there, and now my son, like the son of the father is still doing this. And after those negotiations, when Poland was so-called liberated from the communism, they implemented new economical financial reforms. And that was a reform by Leszek Balcerowicz. That was the name of the guy. He was the Minister of Finances in Poland. And his advisor, I have to mute you because I hear echo from my side. His advisor, American advisor, Michael, who actually created that reform, was Jeffrey Sachs. And that reform sold, well, not that reform didn't sell, but that reform opened the doors to sell the same what took place in Russia during perestroika, like Gorbachev era. They sold for pennies. The factories, people were unemployed. You have no idea how this affected the country, because I'm not saying communism is good, but there was a certain structure and stability in that era. So, for example, no freedom of speech, you have to love the party, whatever, which is, again, sick. Just the same coin, different side. But people had stability with job, with health insurance, with all of this. Thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, I don't think I'm exaggerating, lost the jobs. The factories and the properties and the land was sold to the foreign investors. And that's all I want to say. I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but since I'm Polish, I know the story. And a lot of people watch Jeffrey Sachs like he's such an, they have to do more research, about people as well.
Right. Notice I'm not retweeting him. But actually I was in Poland at that time. That was when I first started coming over. And I was in some of the factories like FSO, the big, car factory. And I think they employed, as I recall, like 13,000 people. I was in FSO car factory quite a few times, actually, and massive. And, 13,000 people, if my memory is right. I was in a lot of those Polish companies. And, obviously I'm very anti-communist, but at the same time, I do realize that it wasn't like when communism left that suddenly Poland was home free. That's obviously not the case. I mean, you see, it was just another sort of predator came in, right? And so that's what's happening now. And now we see the war, and we see the war is in there's a high chance it'll spread to Poland. A very high chance. When I was in special forces, what we trained to do was to parachute into Poland. I spent 3 years training to parachute into Poland. And so, but not as an enemy of Poland. We were a lot of training, like don't shoot at Polish people, right? Do not engage in combat with Polish people. It was there. We were going to go in to fight Soviets. And so that's what I did. And so, but I didn't obviously parachute into Poland because the war never kicked off. But it was quite fascinating. And then after all that, after I left the army, that was when I went to Poland the first time. I never went to Poland when I was in the army, but so the United States, to my knowledge, never saw Poland as an enemy. Actually, there was a big CIA operation called QR Helpful. QR Helpful was the CIA operation to help, that got behind Lech Walesa and Solidarity and that sort of thing. They were smuggling in, parts of printers from Sweden and toner and all that stuff. And the headquarters was over near Paris, actually. But the point is it wasn't for the good of the Polish people. It was just to expand our empire, of course. But
Yes,
I can,
yes.
as long as if our side weren't predatory to the people as well, it would definitely be a better way to do business. But it turns out our side, when it gets the power, will be just as predatory and push death jabs and that sort of thing, right? And now our people
Michael,
are becoming poor.
but Michael, don't you think, and I just want to like finish my talking on this about this here, because when we say this, it's like this is literally what they created. Oh, Americans did it, Russians did it. No, this is what Zionists did. This is what the cult did to create those, like to brainwash people, to present to them this is the enemy, this is not the enemy, or now this is the enemy. Behind those moves, both from the communist side and from the so-called American side, I'm very generalizing right now, is the same group of people. And this is the key. And it's like coming to this conclusion, for me personally, it's like this is just going on for generations and generations and generations. This is not just World War I and then World War II. Like this is before. This is like, they expelled them from the countries, and not even less. I came recently this vendetta revenge with the 65,000 migrants from Morocco, because they remember like in July 31st, like 1492, I think, that Jews were expelled from Spain, whatever the story. Like this has been going on for a long time. Like when this will end, Michael, eventually.
That's the profit model. Hey, I got this book here on gypsies. I got a lot of books on gypsies. And here's a newspaper article I found from in this is really interesting. Let me read this real quick. I think you'll find it fascinating. Just this, it's very short. It's big. I printed it on the printer. Listen to this. Why gypsies claim the right to steal. Have you ever heard this before? It's quite interesting. This gets very interesting. It'll take about a minute. Gypsies have always, whether justly or unjustly, been labeled as chronic thieves. The Romani has never felt that the world is against him and collects toll. Has ever felt that the world is against him. Gypsies were severely prosecuted in days gone by, and until less than 100 years ago, there was a law in England making it a crime, punishable by hanging, simply to belong to the race or to speak their language. The Family Herald says. There is a legend among the Alsatian gypsies that when Christ was to be crucified, the Roman soldiers came to a gypsy smith and asked him to forge the 4 nails for the cross, one for each limb. The gypsy refused in spite of every threat, and when the nails were finally made by a Jewish smith, the gypsy tried to steal them. He succeeded in stealing only one, and that is why on the crucifix one sees both feet held by a single nail. To reward the gypsy for his most laudable efforts, the Lord has granted permission to every member of the race to steal once in 7 years. A gypsy does not steal because he is too weak to resist the temptation, but from topsy-turvy principles. Anyway, there's different variations of that, but the idea is that the gypsies also claim to be perpetual victims, right? And when you ask gypsies, like I've taken Masako to different countries, and I said, we're in London. Let's watch the gypsies on this bridge and how they work people. In different countries we've done this, and so I'm teaching her about these different cultures. That I've learned about. I saw quite a few gypsies in Poland actually when I was there, and I was in Romania and that sort of thing. But but when you talk with gypsies, I mean, they'll say things like that, like they basically have a right to steal. I mean, that's the way they look at things. And you keep in mind, they go even in their old myths, they go right back to together when Christ was getting hanged up on the cross. You know what I mean? With the Jews making the nails and the gypsies stealing one of them, that sort of thing. Anyway, it's fascinating. I don't know how they jump from that part of a myth to we can steal from everybody forever. It's not once every 7 years. But the point is it's very important to understand people's myths. It's very important. It's absolutely vital to understand people's mythology, because people will seek to live it. They'll seek to make it come truth. If part of somebody's mythology is to be hated, or that everybody hates us, so therefore we can do anything to everybody, then everybody really will hate you. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So whatever our myths are, we will consciously and unconsciously seek to make them manifest that destiny, right? As we call the opening of the frontiers in America, manifest destiny. You'll manifest that destiny. And that happens with mythology, right? So that's why I spent so much time studying mythology for many years, spent more than 3 years, about 3.5 years studying cults. And once you when people ask all the time, why would so and so do such and such? That doesn't make any difference. They'll hurt themselves too. And I'm like, that doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference if they'll hurt themselves. That's the mythology. And why would people take drugs when it hurts themselves? Well, because they take drugs, and because they weren't addicted when they started. They got addicted later. But likewise, people get addicted to their cult, very addicted. And the only cult people never see are the cults that they're in.
So wise what you just said. And before we end our interview, because we've been 1 hour in already, and I really appreciate your time, Michael. I know you're very busy. It's almost like, I think in every myth, there is also a bit of truth. But they create those myths in order to justify their behavior. And then they always refer to the story like we see what they are doing right now. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't know if you agree with me on this, like when everything else fails, like when people are working up too much, like you said, they are becoming not popular. There is, hatred, which again, it's not good energy to project on them because they feed from it, in my opinion. But when everything else fails, what they do, they just create another reset. It's always like a reset, because too much of humanity is like self-empowering itself. So then they're going to smash it all. I don't know what you think of this. And this is my last question.
Oh, let me say something, because that's super important. Super important what you just said. In my study of cults, I realized, and actually people had addressed what you talked about centuries ago, actually. And they had noticed that when it's starting to fail, or when a cult seems to fail, like they'll predict something and it doesn't come true. So you might think that the cult will just fall apart, but you just said the magic. They'll reset it. Sometimes the cult grows. Weirdly, you would think, oh, well, such and such didn't happen when they said it would. Rudolph the those reindeer didn't show up on time, so it's over. But that's not what happens. They'll double down and start the recruitment even heavier, and it's fascinating how that works. I mean, it seems like what you said was so simple, but it's very deep. It's like atomic level deep.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate coming from you big time. So the best way to find your work is on YouTube and on Substack. Anywhere else, I should attach the links down below. And on X, you're on X as well, right?
Right. Those 3 are the best.
Okay. And if someone wants to reach out to you for a private consultation, are you still open to those?
I am. I don't do very many, because I don't, like yesterday, I got up at 3 a.m. and went to bed after midnight. So that was 21 hours. Yeah. And but not, and it wasn't doing consultations either. It was doing interviews and just normal life. But but I will do them. I'll do a consultation for the equivalent of 1 ounce of gold. And that high price keeps the traffic low. But when I've done these, I've done quite a few, but it's open-ended conversation. I won't stop it at like an hour. I'll just keep going. And then once I've talked with people, I keep the channels open. So it's a lot of times all the questions don't get answered in one phone call. We talk, and then they go back and think about it for a month or so, and then they message again, and we'll talk again, and I don't add any charge. But yeah, so if you look on the bottom of my Substack, it's got all the methods for payment and that sort of thing.
Great. Thank you very, very much for giving me 1 hour of your precious time. And to anyone who is watching, if you appreciate our video, make sure to hit the thumbs up. It's free of charge, and I'm sure you won't be punished for doing this yet. Who, maybe in the future, God only knows. But who, like, if we are afraid of giving thumbs up, like, where are we really at this point? And if you choose to support Michael's work, go to Substack. Definitely check out his YouTube channel. I know a lot of you already have subscribed. And with this being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. I end my videos like this, which might surprise you, Michael. Lots of love. And remember, we are the leading edge and we are saving humanity. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.